What happens when an organization that's supposed to bring people together ends up tearing them apart? Today, in this Webfit News Explainer, we're unpacking a really tough story. It's about MATA Auckland, a dispute over leadership that's fractured a whole community and has now gone all the way to New Zealand's High Court.
Yeah, this is so much more than just an internal squabble. This kind of headline tells you that a really vital community organization has been, well, paralyzed. It's left its members totally confused, asking a very simple question. Who's actually in charge here?
And this is how serious it's gotten. Look, disagreements like this are usually sorted out behind closed doors. Taking it to the High Court, that is an absolute last resort. It basically signals a complete breakdown of trust, forcing a legal system to step in on what should have been a community issue.
So how on earth does a pillar of the community get this broken? To figure that out, we really need to understand who MATA is, trace back how this whole conflict got started, and then try to see where it might possibly go from here.
Right, so to get the full picture of the conflict, we first got to understand the organization at the very heart of it.
The Mana Andhra Telugu Association, or MATA as everyone calls it, has for a long time been a cornerstone for the Telugu community right here in Auckland. It's been the go-to for connecting people, for cultural celebrations, for important community work. I mean, its whole purpose is to be a source of unity.
But that positive mission, it's now under serious threat. The organization is staring down what is, arguably, one of the biggest challenges in its entire history. And the crazy part is, it's all coming from the inside.
Okay, so where did all this start? Let's go back and trace the timeline to see exactly how these cracks began to appear.
This definitely didn't just happen overnight. It really started with some friction after the 2023 leadership change, which, isn't that uncommon. But then things escalated. By early 2024, it turned into a real fight for control over the group's most important assets, its bank accounts and its social media, its voice and its finances. What started as a small crack became this tangled mess, and it got to a point where you had multiple different groups all claiming to be the legitimate leaders. And that's just a recipe for chaos.
For quite a while, these were all internal issues kept within the organization. But then a moment came when the conflict it couldn't be contained anymore. And that flashpoint was the Ugadhi 2025 celebrations. This is a huge cultural event for the community. But the original venue was apparently canceled just one day before the event. Can you imagine? The organizers had to scramble to find a new place, and it was right then, in that moment of chaos, that the internal fighting became impossible to hide from everybody. And that one event changed everything. What was once an internal power struggle over who was in charge became a very, very public crisis of credibility. Suddenly, the fight wasn't just about who held leadership titles, it was about whether the community could even trust the organization at all.
With all avenues for talking it out failing, the different sides turned to an outside authority to try and settle this thing once and for all.
So yeah, the fact they couldn't find a solution themselves has now pushed this entire dispute into the New Zealand justice system. The High Court is involved, which just underscores how serious this is, as these different groups continue to make their competing claims for control.
So where does MATA even go from here? There's a potential solution on the table, but believe me, it comes with its own massive set of challenges.
On the surface, the idea seems pretty simple, right? Just hold a fresh election. Let the members decide who they want to lead and hopefully restore some stability. But when you have this level of deep-seated mistrust, even a democratic solution is full of potential problems.
First off, and this is the biggest hurdle, will all the different factions even agree to the process in the first place? For an election to work, everyone has to buy in and participate in good faith. That's a huge ask right now.
And let's say they do agree. The next question is, who oversees it? With so much bad blood, finding an impartial third party that every single side trusts, that's a monumental challenge. Without that, the result just won't be seen as legitimate.
Which leads us to the final and maybe the most critical question of all. Even if you manage to hold a perfectly fair election, will the losing side just accept the outcome? Or does this whole thing just start all over again? Honestly, the answer to that question will probably determine if MATA even has a future.
Look, this story is about way more than just one organization. The cracks that formed inside MATA, those are fault lines that exist in community groups all across the country. And that makes this a really powerful and, frankly, a cautionary tale.
And these are the classic problems, aren't they? Unclear rules, messy handovers of power, and internal fights spilling out into the open.
And no matter what the specific cause is, the result is always the same: a total loss of community trust and a loss of the very unity the group was created to build. So, from our perspective at Webfit News, a procedural fix like an election, it just can't be the whole solution. It's a tool for sure, but it's only going to work if that foundation of trust is rebuilt first. This isn't just about who gets a title. It's about restoring people's confidence in MATA's entire purpose: to unite people, not divide them.
And it leaves all of us with a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? Is a community just its formal structures and its leadership titles? Or is it something much, much deeper? Something built on shared trust and mutual respect, the very things that, in this case, seem to have been lost along the way.
Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Understanding these stories in our communities is absolutely essential, and we're going to keep bringing clarity to the issues that really matter across Aotearoa.
And we'd like to mention that this explainer was proudly sponsored by Webfit Solutions Limited, your 100% Kiwi